Welcome back, everybody, to today's lecture. We're going to be talking about use hygienic practices for food safety. So the unit code is SITXFSA001. This unit is essentially the first unit in the 2 units of food safety supervisor. So this will essentially go over the what practices you should be using to follow proper hygiene methods and processes while producing food in your kitchen or in your cafe or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of slides today. I'll be pausing in between for the activities, so you guys will have the chance to pause and complete the activity and come back. As we go along, I'll cover many topics throughout the lecture. So what I want you to do is make sure that you guys if you don't understand, you can go back and listen to what I've said before. Alright, so let's get into it. We've got 1.1, follow organizational hygiene procedures. Essentially, the local council will have the bare minimum, or your food safety authority for your specified suburb or state or country. They will have a set of mandatory processes that you should follow. And then there are organizational procedures which your business, or you, if you're opening a restaurant, will create for your business so that you and your workers can follow. So it can be much stricter, but it can't be below what the government regulations and what compulsory processes that you have to include in there. Okay, so things about personal hygiene. You don't want to be having dirt and grime underneath your fingernails and then producing food. You want to be wearing gloves. You want to wear good and nice and neat clothing, so you don't have like rubbish from the outside. Wear hair nets. If you've got a beard net, hats, gloves. So it's essentially that you're not bringing something in from the outside that shouldn't be in there. Wearing Bandages, things like that. If you're not wearing a glove over them, it might get lost in the food preparation. So it's always important to make sure that you're keeping those basic necessities. So when you follow these techniques, you're preventing any, or at least you're trying to prevent any contamination or any foodborne illnesses to be created and passed on to your customers. Okay, so the hygiene procedures that you would follow in specific cases would be for receiving food, when you're storing food, preparing it, when you're going to display it in a cold or warm display, when you're servicing to customers, and then when you're going to be throwing it away or storing the rubbish in a specified area. When you've got food hazard control, it's going to differ from the differs from storage conditions and transport conditions. So what methods you implement will really depend on what your business requires for you to do. So it's very important for you to talk to the suppliers and through to your boss or your business owner and what type of storage he has and how you're going to accommodate all those things. Systematic monitoring of hazard control, so you're always doing your logs, checking your temperatures, making sure first in first out, making whatever food comes in, you're putting that to the back, then older stuff is coming to the front and being used. Maintaining your expiry dates, best by dates, best before use dates, things like that. Recording of maintenance of equipment, of the shop, any cleaning. So let's say if I was working today and then you're overtaking my shift tomorrow, you would want to know what sort of things I've done, what happened, if there are any corrective actions that I've taken to fix the problem, what did I do, and do you coming in tomorrow need to follow on from those actions. So critical control points, these are points where it's very critical for you to have specific set of processes in place so that everybody can follow and make sure that you don't create any issues of food hygiene or illness being created there. So receiving, so anything that you're getting from a supplier, you need to check their packages, check the temperatures of food, make sure they're not in the danger zone, check if the package is not destroyed, if there's any rodents, maybe there's cross-contamination, things have come in the wrong box. Okay, why have they come in the wrong box? Is it an issue? You've got to think about all these things. If you've got chicken coming in a box that says dishwasher liquid, you've got to think about why it's coming in there. And if your chicken is not sealed properly, you might get the smells from your dishwasher into your raw chicken, so it's not good. Storing, when you're putting things in, you need to replace the old stuff into the front and move them to the front and put the new things into the back, so you're not just pushing the older stock towards the back and you're never rotating anything. When you're preparing things like certain temperatures, how long you're going to be putting things out, how long you're going to be marinating things, these processes need to be in place. So if you're not there as a chef, other people who are working there can follow the process. So there's places where people marinate or defrost in the fridge. There's places where people marinate and defrost just outside. It just depends on what they're following. So if they know, okay, I need to defrost this for 4 hours outside so it can break the ice, and then they're going to put that back into the fridge, that's fine. But let's say you need a whole chicken defrosted by tomorrow, you need to give it at least 12 hours to properly defrost, and in the fridge to come down to come up to 4 degrees from, let's say, negative 18 or 19. So you need to plan ahead depending on what your procedures are for the business. Displaying food, you could be displaying in a cold bar, hot bar, so you've got to follow those two different processes according to your organization. Packaging food, very important. If you're using takeaway containers, you can get broken plastic in your food, so you don't want that to be in somebody's stomach. Serving food, many different places have different plateware. They could be using takeaway plating, one-time use, reusing dishes, in serviceware. So how you're cleaning them, where you're cleaning them, what processes you're following. Transporting and disposing, so when you're moving it from, let's say if you've got a catering order, how are you going to transport this food? If it's cooked food, it needs to be above 60 if you're transporting it cooked and warm and then ready to serve. If it's cold food, you need to be keeping it below 5 degrees. So then you might need a fridge truck which has got cooling inside, and you can maintain the temperature for your food. By the time you get there, it's not above 5 and in the danger zone. Okay. Disposing food, think about where you're disposing it. Maybe you can compost the food, how you're disposing it, what sort of things you're disposing, including recycling and waste, and can you reuse whatever you're putting away, how much waste are you producing, and is it a loss to you? And if you're creating too much food, maybe you need to rethink it, how much you're producing for your business. Cleaning and sanitation. So commercial food preparation areas will require more thorough cleaning than normal kitchens. As so, you're not just eating there. Everybody else that will come through to your business is coming to eat there. So make sure that you're careful about specific things that you do not regularly. Like if you're following proper cleaning procedures for the things that you do every day, most likely they'll be in good shape. But things such as maybe you only do once a month or once every fortnight, you forget, okay, I haven't used this equipment in a while, so what has happened in between? Is it still clean, or do I need to clean it before I use it? So don't forget those things. Okay. Need to keep work area and surfaces clean, disinfectant. So another thing is councils like to see biodegradable things that are food safe, food grade chemicals. You don't want to be using commercial grade chemicals where they're not safe to consume. You want to be using food safe, food grade chemicals, which can be consumed and won't really, yes, it will make them feel uncomfortable, but it won't cause them severe harm. So that's what we're looking for. If, let's say, we've washed the dishes and we've left some residue of a dishwashing liquid, because it's based on natural products, it's not going to harm the person consuming the food. Yes, we haven't followed the proper procedure, but we're not going to take this person to hospital and hopefully that they don't die. But if we had used dangerous chemical, they might have to go to hospital, and there might be severe repercussions, and ultimately death might fall upon that person. So we don't want to be doing that. Okay. Any spilled food, we want to clean up immediately. So now we go on to the 4-hour, 2-hour rule. So studies show potentially hazardous food can be safely held out of temperature control for short periods of time without significantly increasing the risk of food poisoning. So the time for which food can be safely held between 5 degrees and 60 degrees is commonly referred to the danger zone of the 4-hour, 2-hour rule. So the danger zone is between above 5 and below 60. So if you've got cold food that you need to store, you need to make sure, if you're not setting yourself in a time limit, make sure it's below 5 and it's kept in cold storage. If it's warm food or hot food, it's above 60, so that it's not getting into that danger zone. So in the 4-hour, 2-hour rule, what you essentially want to know is, for 2 hours, okay, you can keep it outside, let's say room temperature area, and then within those 2 hours you've had it up outside. At the end of those 2 hours you bring it back in, and then you've got another 2 hours, okay, so in 2 to 4 hours actually, in the fridge or in the hot bar, where it can be served for another 2 to 4 hours, and then after that you need to throw it away. So essentially you've only got 4 hours to serve that food if it's outside and in the danger zone. Okay. Otherwise you don't want to be taking the risk and giving it to someone and then they fall sick and then come back and sue you. So your business might be worth $300,000 where they come back and sue you for millions. So you don't want to be taking that risk. So 4-hour, 2-hour rule, at the first 2 hours that food must be either used up within the 2 hours or thrown out. It can be returned to the refrigeration. So if it's 2 hours outside, you put it back in the fridge, you've got another 2 hours. But if you've crossed the 2-hour mark, you can keep it out for another 2, but you have to throw it out at the end of the 4. Okay, so within the first 2 hours there are 3 options for food. It can be used immediately, returned to refrigeration, so meaning if it's cold storage below 5, if it's hot storage above 60, but you've got to keep your logs, so it's better to keep a recorded track of what's happening with these foods, and I would recommend to do so. Just open up any book, track out, okay, 3 o'clock we've served these takeaways for people going home. We want to be finishing them by 5, so technically it's out for 2 hours. If it's not, we can put it back in the fridge, but if it's kept out after 5, we essentially need to finish it by 7, so we can't really put that out anymore. So we can have a total of 4 hours outside, but if we've maintained the 2-hour, 4-hour rule, or 4-hour, 2-hour rule, we can put it back in the refrigeration and then bring it out for another 2 hours to be sold. Alright, so correct application of the 4-hour, 2-hour rule. Food standards code requirements are followed at all times, including during receival, storage and preparation of food products. Cold foods are not displayed in direct sunlight or temperatures above 25 degrees. Obviously that's it's going to take away from the taste, the look, the texture of your food, so you want to keep it in the recommended storage conditions, and you always find the storage condition on the labels of the food. So whatever it is, and if it comes in a container, it will tell you the ideal storage conditions, whether it might be 4 degrees, negative 18, or above 80 degrees. It'll tell you on the, and if it doesn't, always go to, research or talk to your supervisor on what the recommended storage temperatures are. There is a documented system in place for monitoring how long foods have been in the danger zone, ensuring food is properly identified, and ensuring that food is disposed of after 4 hours. So if you have to dispose food and you haven't sold it, you'll need to do a disposal report. How much, why it's had to do, you've had to dispose of so much food. Has the manager signed off on disposing it? Things like that. Okay, but we need to document the whole process so we know what we can do to rectify this in the future and it doesn't happen again. Okay, so activity 1A, choose one of the critical control points and explain your organization's hygiene procedure for it. So if we're picking a point of storing, we might say, we might go for the first in, first out rule. And what we do there is we make sure to, differ between what is new, what is old. We look at what the best before and the due dates are for both the items. Sometimes you could get something older than what you already have in, let's say your supply is running out and they've given you an old product. You might actually see yourself using the newer supply that you've gotten from your supplier compared to what you already have. So it's really important to use those dates or date codes or specified date regions that they give you on the packaging. After that, we look at what we've had before. So, if we bought fresh carrots today, we would put those fresh carrots right in the back of the fridge and bring in any old carrots in front. So whoever's coming into the fridge, or me, or you, if we come into the fridge, we know to use the fresh carrots first. Always label them when they've been put out, when they should be used by. So it doesn't have to be difficult. You can just take a piece of tape or write down when it was made, when it should be used by, and when it should be disposed of. So those 3 things are very important. So think about when it was stored, or when you got it, or when you made it, when you should be serving it by, and when you should be disposing it by. So when you should be serving it by will not always be the same as when you should be disposing it by, but when you should be disposing it by will always be the last date that you can consume it by. So let's say vegetables might wilt, but they'll still be good to consume. You can have a family meal with the kitchen, you can use it in another dish. But if you wanted to use it on its own, let's say if you wanted to use coriander as a garnish, you would need to use it by its best, best by, best before serve, or best, when it looks fresh. But if you wanted to use it in stock, or if you wanted to dry it out, you could still have another few weeks or few days left where you can still use it, and it's not the best by date. So you've got to think about what works and think about it logically. Okay, so write that down. When you guys have got that written in your learner workbooks, unpause the video and come back. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. We've got report unsafe practices that breach hygiene procedures promptly. So this is really about identifying what's going on, what's wrong, who's doing the wrong thing at the workplace. And it's not really about snitching or telling on somebody or, doing the goody, two shoes type of thing. It's actually really important because you don't want to get in trouble, not with your company, but you don't want the company to get in trouble with the customers. Because if they lose customers, they can't pay you, ultimately. And if a customer gets sick, you're not going to hear the end of it. And most likely the company is going to get sued, might go bankrupt, you don't have a job. There's a lot of things that happen by not following the right procedure. Okay, so we want to think about the requirements for food to be touched by hand. Wearing gloves, very important, using specific utensils, how we're reheating and defrosting specific items, displaying of food and buffets, so following our 4-hour, 2-hour rule, and the danger zones, logging when and where we've put the food and how we put it back in. So if I finish my shift in the afternoon and then somebody's taking over my position, they know what I've done exactly until I've left, and then where they have to continue on from. working with temperatures that promote the rapid growth of microorganisms. So, the colder it is or the hotter it is, the less you'll see bacteria and other organisms reproducing on the food. But if you're, keeping it in that danger zone, that's where it'll be. That's the ideal place for, microorganisms such as bacteria and algae and fungus to kind of breed and reproduce by themselves. So you want to try and avoid the danger zone as much as possible. Okay, so hand contact. Some food might require hand contact, such as cutting or slicing prior to being served to a customer. So I like to say, is it the last point of contact? If it is, let's say if you produce the food and it's going straight into the customer's mouth, that's when you're going to be wearing a glove. And I would much rather have you wear gloves all the time, but if your last point of contact, you should be wearing gloves. Let's say if you're preparing sandwiches and you're assembling everything, you should be wearing gloves at that point. If you're cutting lettuce and then you're going to be washing them, okay, I understand, you might not need to wear gloves at that point. You're going to wash them anyway, you're going to strain them, and then you're going to toss them in a salad tosser, and get out all the water. But if you're going to be assembling that sandwich and somebody's going to put it straight into their mouth, you need to be wearing gloves. Keeping away contaminants from the food. If they've handled raw meat and then going to touch cooked meat, or putting raw meat above cooked meat and the juices transfer, so you've got to maintain these things. Okay. Reheating and defrosting. So you don't want to reheat food too many times. I would only say once you've cooked it, serve it. If you're not, you can only reheat once. And if you're going to take the risk with yourself. Don't take the risk with your customers. So if it's a second reheat, cook it for the kitchen, not for you, not for your customers. For you, okay, that's fine if you want to take the risk, but not for your customers. Okay, only reheat food once. All right. If you're defrosting, thawing, or you could use the microwave to thaw. The thing with thawing in the microwave is it does make your item a lot more drier, as it takes out the moisture. That's what it's supposed to do, but it's a quick process. Refrigeration thawing, like I said to you before when we started, it takes a lot longer, but you have to plan it. It's much safer, so you're not putting anybody in danger by doing that. You just need to think a day or a day and a half in advance, and then essentially it just works out. You take it out of the freezer, might be at negative, let's say 12, and then you put it in your fridge, and it's not going to get any higher than 4 or 5 degrees, whatever your fridge is set to. So even let's say if you keep it till the following day, it's not going to go off or be unusable for you. Okay, so buffets, very important. The 4-hour, 2-hour rule is very important. The temperature zones, you don't want to keep them out of the you don't want to keep them in the danger zone, so you want to keep them out. So if it's hot food, most likely buffets are hot food. You keep them above 60, so you can use a bain-marie, which has got hot water in the bottom, and then it's got the stainless steel trays where you can put your food, and then cover it as you go. You want to use specified utensils for each item that you're serving. You don't want to cross-contaminate. So there's various things that you really want to. It's a lot easier for the chefs when you have a buffet, but the service personnel, they need to pay a lot more attention to the safety issues and the logging and when the food was done, when the food was put out, how long it's been out, is all the equipment working? If it's not, can we still use it? So things like the salad, if you're not putting it in a chilled bar, it's not going to stay fresh, it's not going to look fresh. Okay, so it's going to wilt. If it's not working, how long can you keep it? Okay, if your fridge is not working, maybe max you can put it for 4 hours. So is it going to sell in 4 hours or no? Okay, then you only make a certain amount that you think will sell and have the rest ready in a fridge, so you can quickly chop everything up and put it out as it gets depleted. Alright, rapid growth temperatures. The danger zone is where you'll see mostly your growth happening. So your microorganisms such as bacteria and mold, algae will start growing in that range from 6 degrees and 60 degrees, so you want to have everything out of there, okay? And if it is, you need to maintain that 4-hour, 2-hour rule. After the 4 hours, you got to throw that food away. So I would suggest, from a business perspective, try and avoid having things out in the danger zone, because ultimately you have to throw them out after 4 hours if you're not putting that procedure in place. And most councils will see you if you've got displayed food without any temperature control. They want to see your logs, and if you don't have logs, you're going to get a fine. So, and fines aren't cheap, you know. The cheapest you can get is about like 800, 900. It can be in the thousands, depending on how severe it is, what stage of warning it is. So you don't want to get there. Plus, they put you on the name and shame lists. You know, everybody can see what you've done. You don't want to be there. As a business, you don't want to be there. Yes, you don't really care if your customers don't care, but that's why we're in Australia. Australia's got specific rules. That's why everybody's safe. You're not really worried about, you know, being sick when you go to any place. You know at least the bare minimum hygiene procedures are being followed. Okay, so food standard authorities. So we're in New South Wales, so we follow New South Wales Food Authority. But then there are the others in the other states and territories. Some have a overarching department like we do, like the New South Wales Food Authority, and then there are other states where they push the decisions onto the local council. So the council is your authority, so it really depends on where you are, where you're located, where you're going to be working. And if you're out of the country, it might change between country to country. Some countries are really strict, some countries don't really care at all what you're doing, so it just depends on where you're located. Alright, so 1B. Write an email to your manager reporting a breach of hygiene procedures in your organization. So in this, essentially, I want you to be showing us how you want to communicate with your manager through an email. Okay, so I want you to send an email to somebody, and then whatever you've written in that email, write exactly that in the learner workbook. So structure it as an email, you know, have a subject, you know, greet the person, then tell them what the issue is, what you've done, maybe what you want to see done, if you are the ones maybe that can't take the extra step, and then maybe write, please get back to me, or some sort of connection so they can get back to you with information regarding this, and then just complete the email with a goodbye or acknowledgement of thanks or things like that, and then send it off. So really in the email format. So go and do this, come back, unpause the video, and then we'll go on to the next one. Okay, hopefully you guys had a smooth writing process. Hopefully you've sent those off and you've copied them onto your learner workbook on what you've written. Now we'll move on to the next topic. So 1.3, 1.4. Identify food hazards that may affect the health and safety of customers, colleagues, and yourself. Remove or minimize the hygiene hazard and report as appropriate for the follow-up. Okay, so food hazards, potential contamination, could be broken glass or hair or dirt, anything that's not supposed to be there. Okay, chemical, microbiological, physiological, physical, meaning you know, it could be a toenail, band-aid, things like that. Chemical or microbiological, you know, things like you know, dishwashing soap or bacteria, fungus, things like that. Alright. Broken glass, metals, chemicals and natural poisons, insects and vermin. So if you're thinking about insects and vermin, you've got a big problem. Okay, you need to get in pest control and rectify that immediately. It can't be done by you because you're not a, you know, a specialized person. And most councils, if they see you've got an issue, they want somebody external to come in and do the solution, not you getting cockroach baits from Bunnings and then putting them in the corner. No, you need a specialized person who's going to give you an invoice, who's going to write up a statement saying he did this and this is how it was solved, and then they will take off any you know, injunctions or any closures on your restaurant. Okay, bacteria are microorganisms which can multiply in food and can cause severe health problems when consumed in high enough quantities. So, there's good bacteria, bad bacteria, but we're talking about bad bacteria. So if you're consuming a large amount of it, it's going to wreak havoc on your internal system. Okay, to reproduce, bacteria need to be present in the danger zone, so essentially between 5 to 59 or 57 in this case. And if you chill or freeze or the item, or if you're going to cook it above 60, this will essentially eliminate those bacteria or molds that like to thrive in the danger zone. Okay. Alright, so fungi or yeast, there's good yeast, bad yeast. We use yeast in cooking, obviously. Funguses, there are some interesting funguses that we use. One can be mushrooms. Okay, but we also use a lot of these to add flavor. We can use it to kind of do different things to the meat item, to preserve or to give it longevity. It just depends on what you're doing. But if you're, the way you would identify something that would have yeast in it is just smell it. Does it smell kind of off to you? Does it smell like an alcoholic smell? Is it giving you the wrong shade of color? Is it white or pink? So things like that will let you know if there are issues with your item. Viruses, this is really heavy, especially with food. If I've prepared something, like I'm touching my face a lot now, and I've got a disease, and then I go prepare your food, most likely you're going to have that. So let's say if I've got a cold, I've prepared your food, you're most likely going to catch that cold as well. So having good hygiene procedures, washing, using gloves, things like that will prevent that from happening. Natural poisons, you think about one of the natural poisons can be over-consuming salts. Things like pineapple can be problematic for women. Wild mushrooms can be poisonous if we don't know what we're picking. They can also be hallucinogenic. There are herbs which can be problematic to people. Some natural herbs can be used as hallucinogenics. So, and there are countries around the world who do use them in cooking, but you've got to be aware, is that safe for a specific style of person? And are they aware that they're going to be consuming that? Okay, so you've got to think about, are they young enough? Are they pregnant? Are they too old? Are they not strong enough? Are they diabetic? Do they have a low immune system? So consider those factors before you're creating new and interesting things. Alright, so insects, vermins, rodents, this one is a problem. So there was an issue with Sydney not along, where the light rail was happening. There was underground digging, and essentially it drove out all the rats that was under the Sydney tunnels and sewage lines, and they all just went around and walked around the city and found a nice haven for themselves in restaurants. And then all these restaurants got in trouble because now they have a rat problem. So it might not be always your issue, but it can be external. But you just need to rectify it as soon as you find out. Keep a log of what happened. Call in the professionals. Don't try and do it yourself, because if council comes in and says, oh, okay, you've done this, but what gives you the right to do so? What sort of experience do you have to allow you to perform pest control? Have you done it safely? But if you use the proper, companies to do it, who know how to do it, they'll vouch for you. They'll give you a, written letter saying what they did, and then council's happy to go with that. Okay, so using, all these devices, traps, and, might be, you're looking at your packaging. Is it ripped? Do they have holes? Or why they have holes? Proceeding with questions with each other, looking at why there are problems, and is it recurring? Can you stop them? Is it a location problem? Are you on the ground floor and that's why rats keep getting in? Is there a door problem where it's not sealed properly? So try and rectify those, and then if you can't, you have to essentially move your storage place away from where these things happen. There are places like that allow pets and things into their establishment, where you need to keep your food production areas and your service areas separate. And look, it's iffy, but you essentially want to have a service area where there are no pets, and then a consuming section where they're allowed to bring their pets, and it's their responsibility onwards for what would happen if their pets would contaminate the food. Alright, chemicals, whatever chemicals you want to use, make sure they're food safe, food grade. Council's really looking for that badge, or that written statement on the bottle. They really harm on it now. They really harp on it and say, okay, is it food grade? Okay, let's say if you're using sanitizer, they'll ask you, is it food grade? And if you can't produce a bottle that says food grade, they're going to either stop you or fine you. So you need to make sure you have that now. Okay. Alright, foreign objects, prevent these by wearing gloves. Maybe you forget a bandage in the chicken that you're marinating, or there's somebody drilling and there's bits of wall in your food. So it's very important that you make sure wherever you're producing food, there's no other types of work happening, just food production. Wear hairnets, hats, proper clothing, aprons, to prevent any external things that shouldn't be in your food from getting there. Alright, and reporting hazards is very important. If you don't report, you will get in trouble. It's not with the company, but with the councils, with the food authority. Because if somebody else falls sick because of your negligence, you and everybody else that was involved in the service will be liable. So make sure you follow the proper procedure. If there's an issue, throw the item. I like to say, if you think it's off, then it's off. Don't question it. Don't try and reuse it. If you think there's a problem, then the problem already exists. If it smells weird, if it looks weird, then it is weird. So throw it out and go with something new and something that's got that looks normal and smells normal, feels good, the texture is good, doesn't feel odd to you. Okay. Alright, so now we're on to 1C. You got 3 questions there. Explain how to reduce the hazard posed by bacteria, mold and yeast. So place of storage, how you're storing things, the temperatures that you're making sure that you're storing them. If it's cold food, below 5. If it's hot food, you need to cook it above 60. If you're storing them, keep them above in a closed area such as a fridge or a cool room, or a dry storage area that can be shut, so there's nothing external that can happen, no influxes of humidity, and keeping them out of the danger zone, which is between 5 and 60. Okay. Explain how you would reduce the hazards posed by vermin and insects. Like I said before, keeping them in an enclosed area, using traps, looking at your packaging. Is there anything that looks odd? Is it ripped? Why is it ripped? Does it look like a normal tear, or is it like bite marks? Then you need to call in the right personnel to essentially do a pest control, use traps and things, and then hopefully that gets rid of your problem. And if it doesn't, you really need to kind of reassess how your processes are and why it's allowing pests to get in. Maybe if you're on the bottom floor, you might need to change your storage area and have it maybe elevated so they can't reach it. Explain how you would reduce the hazard posed by foreign objects. Like I said, wear those proper PPE items, gloves, hats, aprons, Make sure that you're not in an area where there's other processes happening or other activities happening. So you don't want to be producing food where there's construction or things flying around. You don't want to be in an open area where there's wind and dust and things like that. So try and be in an enclosed area with only the focus on food production, where everybody's wearing the proper clothing and the PPE. Okay, so write those things down, finish those questions. When you're ready to go, come back and unpause the video and we can move to the next one. Okay, so 2.1, report personal health issues likely to cause hygiene risk. Okay, so this is essentially, you being aware of things that are happening in your workplace. Okay, maybe somebody looks really sick, maybe somebody's coughing or vomiting, or they have cuts and they've had a big issue, they've fallen over, they've got foodborne or food illnesses themselves. So, or it's you, so you're identifying what issues are happening. So if there are issues that may lead into customers getting these, you don't want to be here. Okay, so if you've got vomiting that's recurring, you might tell your supervisor or your business owner, I'm having a hard time with all these XYZ, and I think I'm really sick, and I think me being here is just going to put your food production and the people around you and me into a serious issue, and they might have the same symptoms, and then it's going to be bad for your business. Yes, they can be upset with you. Yes, they might threaten you with the loss of the job, but ultimately you're doing the right thing by letting them know that because you've got this issue, it might affect their customers. And ultimately, if there are no customers, doesn't matter if you've got a job or not, he's not going to be able to pay you. So make sure everybody's safe and everybody's aware of what's happening. Okay, so vomiting and diarrhea symptoms, gastrointestinal illnesses that can easily be passed on to food. In addition to contaminating food themselves, employees with these symptoms must immediately leave the workplace. It is important to maintain hygiene as much as possible while off work. So wash your hands regularly. Wash your hands, use gloves, wear hats, don't have dirt and grime under your fingernails, don't wear jewelry, all those things. Cold symptoms such as coughing and sneezing are often acceptable as long as you take proper hygiene precautions. Ensure you cover your mouth and nose when you sneeze. If you do so into your hands or gloves, wash your hands or change the gloves immediately. Try to keep your distance from other people so you don't infect them as well. And if you think it's getting too serious and you can't continue, tell your manager that you can't continue and you think it's going to be a risk. Because ultimately, if everybody gets infected, there's going to be big issues. Cuts or infected skin. Small cuts in the skin can be covered with a brightly colored band-aid of a suitable size. If skin is infected, it may start weeping, scaling, or discharging. You may continue working in these circumstances if the infection can be completely covered by a waterproof dressing. So if you're covered by a band-aid, you might want to go for another glove over the top and just seal it off with some tape just so it doesn't come off your hand, just to kind of give you that extra protection. Alright, 2A, what should you do if you start vomiting while at work? And if it's something to do with your stomach and you feel like it's not going to be good, you need to tell your supervisor and then leave the workplace if it's going to affect the food production and everybody around you. What should you do if you have a cut or infected skin? So cover it with something bright, such as a band-aid. So any dressing that is bright can be seen by others and it's not going to get loose and get into any food that you're producing. You might want to cover it with additional safety measures like a glove. You might want to tape it down to wherever it's happening so it doesn't go away from you. So there are a few steps there. So I've just listed some. Complete those questions. When you're done, unpause the video and come back and we can move to the next one. Alright, 2.2, reporting incidents of food contamination resulting from personal health issues. You've got, maybe you've got some vomiting happening that's very aggressive, you've got hair in the food, so you might want to report what's happening. If it's not yours, if it's somebody else's, let your supervisor know. If you have to dispose of the food, you might need to complete some reports and then get them signed off by your manager or supervisor so they know what's happening and what you've done to rectify these issues. So now we need to get a note. You need to write a note in your workbook addressed to your manager about a health issue that you found at your workplace and what you've done to solve this problem. And if you've had to throw the food away, what might the estimated value of the food be, why you're throwing it away, and when, what time, things like that. Okay, so if you were asking me, let's say, for example, I had to throw away a batch of, fried chicken marinade or barbecue chicken marinade, and I found a Band-Aid, now I need to throw the whole 5 kilo bucket of marinade away. So I need to write up the report, address it to my manager. I need to say what the issue was. So I found a Band-Aid, a used one, in the bucket, and I don't have any confidence on when it was, how it happened, who it's from, so I'm not going to take the risk. I'm going to be disposing of this bucket of marinade on today's date, which might be the 1st of the 1st, 1997. Estimated value might be $40, and I have started making a new batch of marinade which will be used in other fried chicken, and that's pretty much it. And you might write a note underneath to say, please get back to me with any other suggestions or corrections that may need to be taken. Alright, so write that up. Once you've done that, unpause the video and we can continue on to the next part. Okay, 2.3, cease participation in food handling activities where own health issue may cause food contamination. So where you're sick, where you're preparing a food, serving food, you're in the preparation area or touching service, service area, equipment and things like that, you make sure you go and tell your supervisor that you're not feeling well, and then go get yourself to a doctor or any place that will, see you medically and can help you, maybe an emergency room. And then once you've got the clearance and you're good to go, come back to work and resume as normal. But don't put yourself and everybody at risk just because you think you might lose your job. You need to have open communication with your employer so that you're not creating issues with the customers and other staff. Okay, it may be possible for you to be given work somewhere else in the organization where you won't come into contact with open food. For example, unloading packaged food should be acceptable. However, you should wash your hands thoroughly and ensure you don't spread the infection to other people. So, let's say if I have another job for you to do, I can maybe replace you in another section and where you can't really spread anything. So it might be where, such as you are, disposing of rubbish or cleaning up a specified area where people don't need to be there, so you can still be used. So it's just really about talking to your manager and how they can kind of help you out through this situation, or you in this case, how you can use them if you really need them for the day. Okay. Right, so what shouldn't you do if you develop health issues while at work? So this one's easy. Keep working. You should not be working still if you have health issues. You should not be hiding your symptoms from your manager or your supervisor or your other colleagues. You should be letting them know, hey, I'm sick, I'm really feeling bad and I don't think I can continue and I think I'm putting everybody else at risk. Okay, so don't hide your symptoms. Don't hide your issues. Talk to your supervisor, talk to your employees, talk to your colleagues. Okay, complete this, give me about like 4 to 5 lines explaining what you shouldn't be doing, and then come back, unpause the video, and we move to the next one. Okay, 3.1, maintain clean clothes where required personal protective clothing, so PPE, and only use organization approved bandages and dressings. So they need to be colorful, they need to have, you know, strong glue, that, you know, so they're heavy duty, you can use them properly, you know. So you might be wearing things like hairnets, face masks, a snood, you know, which could be a full wraparound, hat, gloves, aprons, you know, safety boots, sleeves and over sleeves, which could be full gloves or half, from wrist to all the way up to your elbow. It just depends on your workplace and what the requirements are. Okay, bandages, important for you to wear bandages and dressing to cover any potential points of infection. However, they should meet your organization's standards, you know, should be highly visible, colorful, you know, be able to be spotted if they're in some item or something, so you can remove and then quarantine that item so you don't produce that to somebody, a customer or something. Okay. Alright, activity 3A, list what proactive clothing you wear for food preparation and what purpose each has. So talk about hats, you know, allowing you to prevent loose hair to get in food, you know, wearing gloves, you know, preventing contamination, safety boots from you getting hurt and having to put on bandages and not being able to work properly, so things such as a steel cap boot. Okay, research the requirements of bandages, dressings in your organization. So if I was talking about my organization, you know, we have a first aid kit where we have highly visible bandages that we use, but we don't just use the band-aids on our fingers or our cuts or our burns. What we do is we also try and wrap it with cling wrap. If it's on our arm or if it's on our hand, we put a glove on and then we'll tape the end of the glove, or we will tape the ends of the cling wrap so it doesn't fly away and get into the food. So if it's too bad, if the burn or the cut is too serious, we will obviously send you off to the emergency room. But if it's a little burn or little cut and you can still continue, we'll take those procedures on and then allow you to do another you know, work task. Alright, so write those things in there. If you've got any ideas of your own, include them. Unpause the video when you're ready and we can move to the next one. Okay, so now that you've done those, we'll move on to the next one. So prevent food contamination from clothing and other items worn. Alright, so essentially always being clean, making sure that you've got items that are supposed to be worn at the business premises and that they're not dirty, or you haven't come from a construction site carrying all this dirt, and that they're in the right condition, things like that. Alright, so some organizations will use disposable clothing such as gloves. This is not an alternative to hand washing but added protection. Proper hygiene measures should still be taken before putting them on. Most protective clothing includes cuffs to secure your sleeves and stop the overalls or your clothing beneath from trailing in food. So fold your sleeves if you've got long sleeves. Wear gloves. If the gloves have sleeves, you can insert your shirt into those sleeves. Wash your hands in the proper way. Wear proper, you know, if you need mouth guards, shoes, all those things, do them properly. Prevent clothing contamination. Clothing should be clean during your shift and should change it if it becomes overly solid. Stains and sweat on clothing can become breeding grounds for bacteria, meaning you can easily contaminate food. People with long hair may need larger nets or hair clips to ensure it is all contained safely within it. The net should go right around your scalp and enclose all hair within it. So if you've got long hair, tie up your hair in a bun, and then over the top you've got your hairnet. If you've got beards across either both your ears or all over your mouth, ear to ear covered. Alright, so 3B, explain how you can prevent food contamination from clothing or other items worn. So essentially, you don't want to get your clothing inside the food. You want them to be tight enough to where that they're not loose and freely going into food prep, but they're not tight enough to make you uncomfortable. You're wearing gloves, disposable, washing your hands in most cases, wearing the right hairnets, hats, anything that will keep your hair away from the food, things like that. So write those things down, unpause the video when you're ready, and we can move to the next one. Okay, so 3.3 and 3.4, prevent unnecessary direct contact with ready-to-eat food, ensure hygienic personnel contact with food and food contact surfaces. So, we're using the right utensils, tongs, plates, trays. We're using thermometers to check temperatures. We're using spatulas to distribute food from maybe a container to the plate or a container to another container. Hygiene contact, you're thinking about the procedures that you'll use in your organization, washing your hands, and then wearing gloves, then going into preparations, wearing proper clean clothing, minimizing the time of how long it is that you're having contact from one thing to the next, minimizing the potential sources of contamination, so being in a secured environment where you're doing your food prep, where you don't have open windows or wind coming through, all those things. Activity 3C, what equipment do you use to prevent unnecessary contact with food? So you got gloves, tongs, plates, utensils, you can use thermometers to check temperatures, all that kind of stuff. What methods do you use to ensure contact is hygienic? Well, first make sure you understand what your procedures are for your workplace, and then you'll have to follow those. But if you're not sure, think about how would you like people to serve you. You're the customer. Treat them as you would treat yourself. Or think about, okay, am I doing the right thing? If you're picking up food that's been dropped on the floor, okay, if it's something that can be salvaged, obviously you should salvage it, wash it. Don't just put it back in the bowl. If it's something that is made, you don't want to have it drop on the floor like a chicken breast and then just back on the plate. No, you can't really use that. Now it's all covered in dirt and grime because you can't wash it. You can't wash the cooked food and then put it back on the plate, and it's going to lose all its flavor, all that hard work that you've done. So think about what you're going to do, what things you're going to wear, what things you're going to use when you're producing contact with food, and how long you're going to do it for, things like that. Okay, so complete those two questions, unpause the video when you're ready, and come back. We can move to the next one. Okay, alright, so 3.5, use hygienic cleaning practices that prevent foodborne illnesses. So we're thinking of sanitizing benches, cleaning all surfaces after each use. So if you've got one customer, you don't want to just put them on the same table that's already been used. Clean the surface and then put them back. So removal of food waste, you want to be cleaning as you go, so you don't want to build up a large area of waste everywhere. So clean up, move it into the bin, and then you've got one central place that you have to really heavily clean. Removal of grease and dirt on your cooking areas, your ventilators or hoods, exhausts, things like that will catch a lot of grease. Your grease trap through your sinks, they will catch a lot of grease. Removal of dirt, especially in your places, have a regular sweeping and mopping schedule. If you think that it needs to be mopped, if you feel like it's dirty, you must. Like I say, if you think it is, then it is. So if you think it's dirty, then clean it. Don't have a question, just do it. Okay. Removal of animal or pests. So if you've got a cafe where there's pets allowed, you might want to restrict and keep a section where there are no pets, so you can have that just for your food production. And then the service areas might be okay, pets allowed and non-pets, and pets not allowed, so you can still have customers who don't want pets around their food, and then a separate section for people who want them. Recalibration of measurement and temperature controls, so using thermometers, temperature guns to check your temperatures, using the logs to make sure that everything is working. For calibration, you might use the boiling water method or the ice method. It just depends on what you know. The boiling water ones is easy. Everybody knows that water boils at 100, at least at sea level. So if your temperature says it's not, you could say 98, 97, but if it's saying 80 when the water is boiling, then it's not working, so you need to recalibrate. Okay, so you set it around, you recalibrate the item around 99 or 100, and then you're roughly there. Having a 2 to 5 degree factor of that they can be off, it's still okay, but being 20% off, that's a bad problem. At waste disposal, it's important to limit the amount of waste in the area. Bins and other waste disposal systems mustn't be allowed to overflow, as this will spread contamination and attract pests. If waste is spilled, it should be cleared up immediately and the area cleaned to ensure it is not contaminated. So we clean our bins every day, we give them a hose down, we give them a wash, and then we reset with a bin liner. And then once we're done with that, we go and dispose our old rubbish in our rubbish room, where there's 2 separate bins, one for recycling, one for waste. We try not to fill it to the rim. If we do, we will rebook another disposal from the company, so we can stay away from having it overfilled and creating a situation where animals can get into them, and create situations where they can live and breed and all those sorts of things. Alright, so cross-contamination, this is where things such as raw food get into cooked food, or vice versa, or hair, dirt, grime, grease, everything gets into your food, making it unusable, uneatable. So if it falls on the floor or another area, you got to think twice before using it. You got to wash it thoroughly. If you've got a doubt that there might be an issue, you can't use it. Equipment which is touch raw foods and then putting in another equipment like temperature, like thermometers. If you're putting it into raw meat, you can't, without disinfecting and washing it, put it into cooked meat. You need to follow the process and then use it again. People who have touched raw food or handled ready to eat food without washing their hands. So you got to wash hands between every movement, between anything. If you're preparing something, you've got to take off your gloves, wash your hands, go into the next one. And you got to take that time. Use that 30 seconds to really get your hands washed properly, and then move to the next task. There should be sinks designated in your work area for just hand washing. Any restaurants that are approved in New South Wales will have a designated hand washing sink. So you shouldn't be doing prep in there, of course. There should be prep sinks that are separate to your hand washing sink. Alright, so let's go on to 3D. Describe waste disposal process in your organization. So for myself, like I said before, for us, we take out the waste out of our bins. We make sure it's not overflown, otherwise we'd put it in another bin liner. We wash our bin, we give it a nice rinse with our hose, give it a wash, dry it out, and put another bin liner ready to go for the next morning. Then we take our waste to the bin rooms, where we fill it up and then make sure we close it up, block it up, so there's no vermin or animals that can get back in and produce or rip up or create any areas where they can reproduce or live or anything like that. So we try and keep the room clean as possible, as much as possible anyway. And if the rubbish is overflowing, we book in another pickup day for our rubbish, and the company will come. They're happy they're making money, so they're happy to come and pick up more rubbish. So just depends. If we're busy, we can afford it. If we're not busy, we need to be smart about our waste. We need to manage our waste better, and the less waste we can make, the more money we can keep in our pocket. It's simple. Alright, explain the meaning of cross-contamination. So it's very simple, you can look it up, but essentially contamination is where something that shouldn't be there is in that item, and cross-contamination is taking from one place to the other. So think about having raw meat juices into a cooked item, and now it's contaminated and you can't use it. So it's just going from one place to the other, and things that don't belong together, and you can't consume, otherwise it makes it unhealthy. Alright, so complete those questions. Once you're done, come back to me and we can move forward. Alright, 4.1, 4.2, wash hands at appropriate times and follow hand washing procedures consistently. Wash hands using appropriate facilities. So you want to take 30 seconds to 1 minute to wash your hands properly. Okay, you want to use gentle warm water or cold water. You don't want to use hot water where it burns you or scalds you. Use soap, use biodegradable soap if possible. Take the time, clean between the gaps of your fingers, the gaps of your fingernails if possible, the back of your hand, the palm, and up to at least half of your arm or all the way to your elbow, depending on what your procedures are like. If you don't have any arm coverings, then go all the way to your elbow. If you've got arm coverings on, then wherever it is exposed, you need to wash thoroughly over the top. And you want to spend about a nice 30 seconds to 1 minute just washing your hands, so that whatever you were doing before doesn't move on to the next item. Alright, so how you should be washing your hands. You should be doing it when you start your shift, when you have been to the toilet, touching your face, cleaning any equipment. If you've scratched your backside and you've scratched your nose or something, you need to wash your hands. Handling any waste or money from other people, you need to, it's coming externally, so you need to wash your hands before you go back in to any activities that might cause cross-contamination. So eating, drinking, if you're drinking in a food production place, you don't want to be there. Handling food that is cooked or ready to eat. If you're serving it to somebody, you need to make sure that you're serving it in the best hygiene, processes as much as possible for your business. You won't be able to disinfect everybody in your workplace, but you need to make sure that everybody that is doing the work there is following proper procedure, washing their hands, using gloves, using hand sanitizer. Taking the time to do those things will really help your business in the long run, because customers will have confidence in your business. They'll come in and they'll see, okay, this place is clean. I can come back again and hopefully find this place the same way I found it last week. So, they want to come to a clean, nice place to eat. They don't want to come to a smelly place with weird odors and rubbish everywhere and things like that. Okay? If you're touching hair nets, your hair, your face, any open wounds, things like that, make sure you wash your hands before you go into preparation. Okay? Hand washing techniques: wet your hand, apply the soap to every surface of your hand and arm, I would say. Rub your palms together, the back of your nails, the back of your hand, underneath the nails, between the fingers. Okay, rub your thumbs into the opposite palm. Make sure you get nice and comfortable both sides of your hand. Rinse the soap off. Okay, wash it off, and then dry your hands properly with a disposable towel. You don't want to be reusing a cloth towel. That creates another place where bacteria can grow. Okay, so you want to be using disposable towels. Alright, so allergen management, this is very important. Allergies have become really serious now. As days go by and more years go by, more and more people are being born with food allergies. As it's becoming more common, most people would die in the 1950s if they found out they had a food allergy, because there was no way to test for it. So if they had an issue, they would swell up and they would die. So, but now we can check for that, and people, they're not dying from it. So we have to treat them as a customer, and they will eat here. So we need to create foods that we can allow them, they can at least consume without worrying about, oh, am I gonna have an issue with nuts or shellfish or eggs or anything like that. So we need to essentially ask for what issues they have, such as, you know, what food allergies, what intolerances they may have, if they've got any sort of diseases like celiac disease. You know, I'm not really a fan of trying to cater to everybody, because it's going to be really hard for your chefs. Unless you've got a big team, that's fine, but if you're 1 or 2 people cooking, specify what you can and cannot do, and if you can do it, great, but if you can't, don't try and do something which will backfire on you anyway. So figure out what your limitations are and then write them on the menu in the back or in the front, wherever you think will get the most attention, and then hopefully your customers will let you know what's happening. But you also want to have your servers who are talking to these customers ask if they have any issues with food or any problems, such as maybe they're allergic to sesame or wheat, tree nuts, you know, milk, peanuts, fish, egg, you know, any crustaceans, you know, like prawns or anything such as soy, wheat, you know, things like that. Alright. Spread of allergens, you know, we're working in a place where there's so many ingredients. I might be producing a salad with nuts in it, which might be next to a box of chicken which is going to be grilled, but maybe one of my nuts have flown into the chicken that might go into a person who can't have nuts. So it's very important for us to finish one prep, move that away, and move on to the next one, so we don't cross-contaminate, and try and avoid as much cross-contamination as possible. So we don't use one spoon or one tong in one item and then move across without washing into the next. Okay. Cleaning, following the proper sanitation procedures in the items, making sure everything's correct, and treat it as you would treat yourself. You don't want to put yourself at risk, so don't put others at risk. Okay, they're trusting you to give them some sort of food item that they can consume and come back to consume day by day or week by week. So you don't want to lose that. Alright, know your ingredients. Accept correctly labeled foods. Check all ingredients, even in sauces, spices, garnishes, oils, dressings. Okay, anything that you're going to be using. Know things, from you read the labels. What's on there? Okay, what do the labels say? What things do the labels say that you should be worried about? Avoid ingredient substitution. Think about, if you could do it in a safer way, already use the safer method. So instead of using, like we don't use pineapple to get our sourness, we use lemon juice. So not most people are allergic to citrus, but maybe a pregnant woman might find pineapple juice hazardous, as she might have some sort of issue with her baby. So you got to think about those things as you create a recipe and have preparation processes. Be familiar with all ingredients, as some may be derived from one or more of food or allergens which may be obvious from their name. So this is one thing that's interesting, like soy. These are fermented. So if you think about it, if something's being fermented, it creates alcohol, which you can't sell in a halal premises. But there are companies who produce these things and then take away the alcohol, evaporate the alcohol, burn the alcohol away, which in turn kind of makes them halal to consume. So you can produce these things with those ingredients that are specified to be as to be. So they can be produced. You can produce maybe a fried rice for somebody that's got a halal food requirement, if that soy sauce has been evaporated of the alcohol and it's been certified halal by a certification board. Okay. Avoiding cross-contamination, like I've said before, you don't want to be working with nuts, then moving on to chicken, and then if it doesn't have nuts in it, it shouldn't have nuts in it. If it doesn't have soy in it, it shouldn't have soy in it. Think about your recipe, what your servers or waiters are going to tell the customer, and then you serve something different. They're not going to be able to eat, they're going to be angry at you, so there's going to be a fight starting already if they haven't eaten anything. If they've hadn't eaten anything, that's even worse. If they haven't started a fight and they've eaten something, that's even worse. Why? Because now they're going to have reactions to the food. You're going to have to call ambulances. You're going to have to say, try and save face with them. They're going to try and sue you for trying to kill them. Obviously you didn't try, but they don't care. They don't want to be going through that. And whatever harm that you put them through, they're going to have issues with it. So try and protect yourself. Know what you're doing. Okay, store foods safely. Have a dedicated area for preparation. Whenever possible, prepare foods for people with food allergies first. Have some way of identifying the meal for the person with food allergies. Put some notes or labels so that they know this is for them. This is made specially for them. Write some instructions. Put a sticker. Make it visible that it's different and it's not like the rest of them. Okay. All right. So take the meal to the customer with the food allergy separately. Check the allergen-free meal is given to the person with the food allergy, so then it's not given to someone else. The people on the table aren't touching it. They mix it, and then all your efforts are just now lost. Okay. Listen to the customer. Ask them questions. Request them if they have anything that they let you know. Listen carefully. This is not going to be really important for you as a chef, but if you are a waiter or a food handler, it's going to be very important for you because you need to know these things, what they mean. If they say you have an allergy, well, what does allergy mean? Okay, they're going to have reactions. It might be severe, it might be very bad, or just get an upset stomach. You can recommend things that might prevent from them having an issue on the day. So if you don't know, it's going to be a really big issue for you. Listen to your customers. Place the name of the known allergens next to the menu item. So if you're creating stuff and you know what the issues will be with the people, write them down on the menu. That's it alleviates the pressure off you, off your service staff, and they can read it if they can read the menu. Okay, the peanut allergy. If you have a peanut allergy, please do not purchase this item. Easy. Okay. Like we always include a note in front of our menu, which asks the customer to let the waiter or service staff know that if they do have allergies, that they let us know first before ordering, and then we can guide them accordingly to the menu items that they can eat. Okay, educate the staff. Like I said before, train them, test them regularly, see if they have kind of kept up to speed. Teach the staff, what obligations they have to the customer, what certain allergens are, what they mean, and how to communicate that to the chef also, and then how they can work together to still give that customer an item they can consume. Okay, egg handling, very important. You can get salmonella from eggs. Okay, giving eggs to infants, elderly, pregnant women, or people with reduced immunity. You want to know where the eggs are coming from, if they have any diseases, if if they've got any allergies to eggs. Not just having a risk of salmonella, but maybe they can't handle eating eggs. You need to know those things. Things that might have raw egg. You've got mayonnaise, aioli, salad dressings, hollandaise, eggnog. We don't really have eggnog in this country. It's not really a tradition, but people still consume it. So raw eggs, got to be careful. Health shakes, chocolate mousses, tiramisu, and other desserts. We can make chocolate mousses without having raw egg, but it's just using the substitutes. It's better to just use that substitute than to have raw eggs. Any way you can prevent using raw items, I would strongly suggest that you try and prevent that. Yes, it's good to create your own mayonnaise, your aiolis, but if you can store buy, it's a lot better because they have preservatives. They know how long it will last. You as a chef, yes, you could put an expiry date on it, but it won't be scientifically correct because you don't know how long your specific makeup of your item is going to last. So storing these in the right conditions in the fridges, they play a big part as well. Prevent and reduce eggs from spreading salmonella through egg products. You can, like I said, opt for commercially produced raw egg products rather than making these products from scratch. Use pasteurized egg products instead of actual raw eggs wherever possible. You can also reduce the risk of salmonella. Yes, you can use substitutes. I would, again, if you can use substitutes, why consider using raw eggs? Use a substitute in the first place. So don't consider it a substitute. Try and not have the recipe include raw egg in the first place. Okay? Because now you're having a whole bunch of issues that you have to consider. Alright, safety practices: never buy or use cracked or damaged dirty eggs. Always store eggs in the fridge or in their own cartons of packaging. When storing and handling eggs, take the same precautions as you would when handling and preparing raw chicken, meat, seafood or dairy products. Very important. You don't want to be using these items and then finding out that there's an issue. So if you're putting these away, make sure they're kept in the fridge. If you're putting them outside in a area, okay, how hot is the area? Is it too hot to put? Okay, then you can't put it in that specified area. Put it in the fridge. So if you're going to ultimately have to put it in the fridge, don't put it outside, just put it in a cool storing area. Okay, so you when you're doing your positives and negatives and you're weighing these options out, it's better to just go into the positive, the safest possible option, than to go, okay, I can do this, if not, and I can do this. You're wasting time. Go straight into the fridge. Don't think about, okay, I can leave it out for 10 days here and then I can put it in the fridge afterwards. Why take the risk? Safe practices: cook eggs and food containing eggs until they are hot, cooked all the way through. Use pasteurized egg products in foods that will not be cooked or will only be lightly cooked. Alternatively, change the recipes to not require raw eggs as an ingredient. Like I said before, if you've got an alternative, use the alternative. Include egg safety messages in food hygiene training for staff. So if you are including raw eggs, you need to train your staff in how to handle them, how to use them, okay, and how they should communicate that to the customer. Cleaning and sanitizing. Pre-scraping the utensils or surface to remove most of the food residue is really important. Why? Because most places will use a washing machine, and if you don't pre-scrape, you got all these chunks that are still stuck onto the utensil or the plate, and then they don't really get washed properly, and then somebody's got to now polish them, and if the polishing doesn't work, they still got residue on that item. Using warm water, detergent and agitation to remove food residue, rinsing the detergent and food residue away. So I would also add here to dry them before you use them. So air drying is the best way. Obviously, and with time they will dry out. So sanitizing with hot water, you want to be above the 77 degrees. 100 degrees is good, but it's not required. We just want it hot enough to kill the bacteria. Okay, leave it in there for 30 seconds. You'll see most washing machines won't let you turn itself on if you're not using hot water, or at least water to the temperature of 75 and up. Once it's ready, it'll start going. So if you're using it in the sink, you need to use a heating element in the sink. So then once you put it in there, it'll get pretty hot, and then you can put your utensils in there and it'll sanitize everything. Or you can just pop it onto the stove, pop it in the container or the pot, make it boil, and you're done pretty much. Okay, chemicals can be used to sanitize tools and food contact surfaces. This can be done through the use of commercial dishwasher or by hand. Like I said before, the correct chemicals for the use should be indicated by the manufacturer of the chemical and must be used in the correct concentrations to be effective. So you want to make sure as well that they are food grade and biodegradable. You don't want to be harming the environment. You don't want to create situations where there are some residue left and people are consuming that and then they fall sick. So if you use food grade, biodegradable chemicals, it kind of helps you in both ways there. Ensure that you consult manufacturer information when using chemicals to sanitize work areas and equipment. If you're confused, the best way is to ask the people who made it. They'll let you know how to sanitize. They'll let you know what you should be doing. If it's okay, you sanitize and let dry, or you can sanitize and use straight away, or sanitize and not perform any task for 10 minutes. They'll let you know. And if you can't reach them, talk to a manager who's used it before and what the best procedure is to use it. Or just read the label. If there is no label, then you need to go to your managers or the manufacturer, obviously. But reading the label is probably your first option in that case. Alright, so activity 4A, this is the last activity. So before you guys move on to this activity, we've got the assessments that are due. So you've got your multiple choice, learner workbook as you're doing with me. You've got the knowledge questions, skills and assessments as well. So we got to do all of that for us to finish this unit. Okay, so let's talk about the activity 4A. Describe in detail how to wash your hands. So you want to go through those steps using warm water, soap, going through the back and front of your palms, using your thumbs, cleaning between your fingernails, between the ridges of your fingers. If you've got exposed arm areas, clean up to your elbow. It's just how much is exposed. You want to clean regularly between any task that requires you to move from item to item, or if you've touched your face, or if you've received money, things like that. Give 4 examples of when you should wash your hands. Yeah, so like I was talking about, if you've received money from somebody, if you've stopped one task and you went from raw food and you went to cooked food, if you've touched your face, if you've touched your hair, if you need to stop work and go outside, if you've come from outside, if you've just started work, if you're finishing work. There's so many things. You should be washing your hands almost between any task that you change up, or if you've touched anything that's unknown to you and you've eaten, and so you should be washing your hands in between. Okay, so complete those questions, complete your learner workbook, submit that to your trainer. If you've got any questions, you can just email me or get in touch with your trainers and they can answer to the best of their ability. If not, just email me at admin@wisemanaducation.com.au and I'll be able to direct you to the best possible answer that I can provide. So that is it for this topic, and I will see you on the next one.